Right, thank you everyone. I'm bloody nervous, so bear with me and be kind, right? Also, I'm a designer and I'm going to be talking about a development subject. So again, be very kind. If you can't hear me at the back, do shout. And I shall do my best to project. How's that? Yeah? Good stuff. Okay, first of all, right, I work for a company called KO and we are, these days we call ourselves a digital transformation company. It's a fancy way of saying we're not just a web design company. We do bespoke software, mobile apps and websites. So we get to see quite a lot of different projects come through our doors for both of our teams. My history is I used to run a small agency over in Maidstone called Squidders. You may or may not have heard of this. And KO is the coming together of Squidders, another web agency called Interactive Red from Canterbury, and a software company called Moco who are based out in Rochester. So we've got a really vast array of different developers with different backgrounds. Okay. The kind of clients we've worked with over the last couple of years have been the NHS, KCC, Bird & Brothers, Firmin, and quite a few more. But like I say, I'm a designer, so you get to be really kind to me today, or take out all your designer frustrations on me, one or the other. So I'm going to do a very quick poll. I read a book, it said audience participation's good, so let's start with that. Can I get hands for any designers in the room tonight? Oh, you are joking. Do I need to ask if there's any developers in the room tonight then? Yeah, thank you. Totally outnumbered. This is a setup, isn't it? Right. But today I'm talking about headless e-commerce even. So this is a quick thing. I'm not going to spend the whole time reading the slides because, again, you're not meant to do that. But what is headless e-commerce? What headless e-commerce is using an e-commerce platform, your Shopifys, your Magentos, and the like, BigCommerce, and many, many others. And we're decoupling the back-end system from the presentation layer. That's essentially what it is. So the back-end system does what it needs to do, why reinvent the wheel? But we are decoupling the presentation layer so designers like me can have a lot of fun and make developers' work an absolute nightmare. But most importantly, what we're doing is solving problems for our clients. Okay, sorry, bear with me a sec. Okay, we'll go without notes. Brilliant. So you can work on any e-commerce platform which is set up for API calls. Now, obviously, you all know what those are, so I'm not going to waste my time talking about that. But the big question is, why on earth would you want to do that? Okay, the whole idea is about freeing your design. We're breaking free of lazy solutions to evolving problems, multi-platform in the age of Internet of Things. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about that. The idea of freeing the design is, as designers and developers, what we exist for is to solve our clients' problems. Okay, now problems come in many shapes and sizes, and an off-the-shelf system can't always solve those problems. I've spent too many years compromising in what I actually want to do and what I believe can sincerely help a client deliver the results they want, because I'm actually tied between choosing between half a dozen platforms. So a client comes to me with a particular problem, and what I'm thinking is, right, does this problem best suit Magento or does it best suit Shopify, for example? And as I say, we're quite lucky in the fact we have quite a big development team these days with lots of different experience in different areas. But even so, I'm still limited to half a dozen platforms to choose between. So one of the other reasons is breaking free of those lazy solutions. Sometimes I think of a really good idea that will solve a particular problem for a client. And it could be a really niche example of it. Maybe a client wants to get their sales alert into Slack. And the platform I'm using doesn't do that. By decoupling the presentation layer, we open up so many more different possibilities for what we can do. Hello. Come in if you want. No? Right. Okay. And then I also want to talk about multi-platform in the age of Internet of Things. Now this sounds like a really strange thing to talk about. But obviously when you use your Magento, Shopify's, BigCommerce, others are available. They're designed for a browser, they're designed for a certain set of screens. They might be wonderfully responsive and they're going to work on your phone, they're going to work on your tablet, on your desktop, laptops and all the rest of it. But how about a really niche situation that I thought of earlier? For my sins, I use one of these vaping things because I'm cool and down with the kids. I'm a reformed smoker. But I always use the same retailer for all of the liquids I put in my vape pen or whatever you actually call the things. How about if I could have a smartwatch app linked to my e-commerce platform? I'm going to order the same thing every time. All I actually need to do on a smartwatch is enter a number and hit a button. By using Headless e-commerce, I could actually integrate that with my web store and actually have an app that's directly integrated into the store. Just one idea. Okay. So, how does it work? Now, this is a designer's simplification of how headless e-commerce works. Really, really simple, okay? What we have here, oh, I could use that. What we have here is a wonderfully designed website by me and my team. Part of that, we've got really good, strong call to actions that say buy now. Then somehow, through an API call or possibly witchcraft, I'm sure at this stage, we speak to the back end, we get an API response, and then we send that response to the customer. Really basic. Okay? Anything wrong, developers, with that so far? No, we're all good. No one's telling me off yet. Nothing's been thrown. Excellent. Let's keep running. So I'm going to do some pros and cons then. How about we look at our traditional platforms? Really obvious pro, it's quick, and it's out of the box. Imagine if you're also using a particular theme, it's for quite a low budget project, and you get to, the client selected a theme with your guidance, with your help, or with your designer to help them. You can be up and running and set an e-commerce shop up in an afternoon. I don't think that's too unrealistic to say that, maybe a long afternoon. A lot of the stuff that comes out the box in terms of the front end is going to be really familiar to your customers as well. All the buttons are going to be roughly where they expect them to be. Your checkout process is going to be pretty much what they expect them to be. The basket's going to work pretty much how a customer expects it to be. That's a massive pro. As much as I like innovating, we mustn't innovate to such a degree that customers lose that familiarity with the project. Whenever I speak to junior designers, I remind them that every time that someone goes on your website for the first time, they are using a brand new bit of software that they have never ever used before. They don't want to sit through an introductory video on how to use the website, okay, and they're not going to read an instruction manual. They need to intuitively know how to use the website right from the get-go. That's a massive pro for using a traditional platform. Okay, I've been doing this gig long enough that I used to design Flash websites back in the day. Hands up who remembers Flash? You know, some of you look old enough. I'm not casting aspersions, but some of you do look old enough. I used to design pretty kick-ass Flash websites. They were amazing, but who remembers the dark days of that as well, where you couldn't actually find out how to get from one page to the other? And I'm not even talking about the intro movies, which were a travesty, but I'm talking about menu systems that used to rotate around, or there'll be a character dancing on the screen. If you want to go to the contact page, you've got to hit their left earlobe or something like that. So it's a massive pro that it's familiar for people. And also it's a familiar environment for you guys. A designer knows that if you're using a certain platform and you're using everything to do with that platform, they're going to design pages that work for you guys. Okay, we need a checkout page. What can I do in Magento for a checkout page? Well, I've got a few options. I'm going to pick one of those. Development team comes in and goes, bish bash bosh. I imagine that's what you do. Don't know. Think. And everything's up and running. And again, it's familiar. Okay, but there is always the cons as well, of course. We've got limited customization. You can customize, I know you can, and many of you may argue there's more than enough customization. And actually, what I'm not trying to do here is say that every project needs to be a headless e-commerce. I'm saying I want that to be part of the consideration when you're thinking about how to build a project. Okay? Limited customization, yeah, you can change the theme, you can change the colours, you can change the typefaces, you can change the images, you can switch the order of how modules appear and all the rest of it. That might well be enough. And for probably 95% of the stuff you do, it will be. It's until that client has that niche need or that real out-of-the-box way of thinking to achieve a certain goal. As I mentioned, it is restricted to websites. At the moment, pretty much the platforms you get off the shelf are restricted to website. And so we end up with, as a result of that, a shoehorned solution. Okay. But let's have a look at headless e-commerce now. Should we start with the pros? Because I'm here kind of as an advocate. So we've got unlimited revisions to the user interface. Absolutely, you can do what you want. And again, that's also a con if you get a designer who goes a little bit too far. You can set a user experience that's really fit for purpose, and I do have some examples coming up later as well. Okay. It's multi-platform, again, our Internet of Things. we've got a streamlined content management system for the client. Meaning that if you decouple most of the e-commerce stuff, you can run your own content management system, and it might be really stripped down for that client. You can do things like ensure they're not installing extensions that are going to ruin everything or have security vulnerabilities in them, for example. Okay, the whole thing about it being agile and able to pivot with trends and technology. One of the things we're really hot on KO is not just delivering a website and saying, thank you client, may I have our check, and we'll see you later. See you in 5 years when you redesign it. We like continual improvement. That's what we're after. And by decoupling, we give ourselves so many more tools in our toolbox, being able to pivot with those needs. Okay, and integrations with other systems. So, as I mentioned, sales alerts and Slack. I joke about that, that was a real request we had. Okay. Here's a pro, you can't use extensions without risk to the build. As I mentioned earlier, those dodgy extensions that you can get, I mean, certain platforms, certainly if you're using something like WooCommerce with WordPress, your client's got the ability, unless you really want to lock them down, to install extensions. Now, no one security tested half of these. They can end up having serious ramifications for the client. And guess who they call when they break their website? They call you guys. You need to drop everything, and you need to fix their problems, otherwise they start shouting. Okay, let's look at the cons. There are many, and this is why it should always be a consideration. Your presentation layer needs to be designed and built. Now, as a designer, again, I love doing that kind of thing, but someone's got to pay for it. So, in essence, unless you're feeling incredibly charitable, or you're doing something really nice, then it's going to cost your client more money. Okay, it's not a decision to be taken lightly. There's a greater responsibility on your design team to make good design decisions. Okay, not any kind of decision, that will do. You need to think about every single thing, every hover state, every button placement, absolutely everything. Personally, I think it's great. As a big fan of critical thinking, I like to question absolutely everything. Why is that button there? Why is that button next to that button? Why is that button dark and that one light? Is that button red or is that button yellow? What do they mean? What are they saying to the client? And that's the kind of stuff that gets me out of bed in the morning, I'll be honest. But hey, I'm a designer, it's what we do. And again, I put it as a con, you can't use extensions without risk to the build. Because we are limiting what the client can do. We are locking down the system where they're going to need much more of our help going forward. Now that is a benefit for us as a business, but being ethical, we also want to make sure the client's got as much control as possible. So we have to talk and explain this kind of thing to a client every time we opt for a system like this. Because we don't want to mislead anyone. Okay. So how we've done it historically, and one of the examples I'm going to use presently, is we decouple Shopify, for example, and we link it to Rocket, which is our in-house CMS system. Now, of course, we're built on two design agencies, so of course we have an in-house CMS system because everyone does that and then often regrets it. But actually Rocket has been built over the last 5 years, and it's an awesome bit of kit because we can tailor it to be exactly what the client needs it to be. And I'm sure every in-house CMS system will boast that as well. But there's a reason we do it. Now we prefer to build this way, so it was logical to bring e-commerce into our platform. But while we want to reinvent the whole wheel, we can use those components of Shopify that work, that have been tested, that we know have been tested, but then bring that in. So here's a website we built for a company called Parsons Nose. Now these are very posh butchers. I'm a vegetarian, it's really odd that I'm talking about a meat website, but never mind, this is the example my colleague Justin gave me. What Parsons Nose are is they run free butchers outlets in very posh areas, Kensington, Putney is it? Putney? Fulham. Okay, so you know the kind of market they're after. So they also have a buy online and a click and collect service as well. They had a real specific set of needs, okay? And I'm going to show you a little video because it means I get to stop talking for just a second, which is quite wonderful. And this shows you how some of the things evolved on the website. For example, this is a Shopify site, But what we wanted to do, when someone goes and selects a certain cut of meat, we want to show certain things against that. We might want to show an article about where this particular bit of meat has come from. You know, we might tell the tale of the cow that it came from. It's getting really macabre now. But, you know, who his friends were, where he ate grass, where he went to university. Struggling to think of other things. But also we want to show recipes on how we can cook Fred, or Dave, or whatever his name was. Okay, let's see if I can get this to play, and then I will talk whilst this is playing. Yes, great success. So right, we're having a look at the front end at the moment, obviously. Hopefully you can see this all right. It's actually playing. Oh, technical difficulties. Yes, great success. Right, so this is a front end, and we're going to select, I'm guessing from memory now, yeah, I'll click and collect service. We're going to look at all the cuts of meat that we can choose. These animations were all not out of the box. These are something that we can put in. We're going to click on a fillet steak. I remember this. Okay, so a bit of an example. We've got some related products down there. All pretty standard, if you think, for an e-commerce store. But let's go in the back end and let's start making exciting things happen. We're going to find our product. I'm guessing now what this says, because I can't actually read any of this text. Okay, so we're going to select our product, and then we're going to start adding extra things to it. So we're going to start adding articles, and we're going to start adding recipes as well. Oh no, sorry, these are related products. So we're actually setting our related products. But what I'm showing you, this is all happening in Rocket. The customer doesn't have to log into 2 different content management systems. We're pulling this stuff in from Shopify's product system. Now we can start adding things like articles, and we can start adding things like recipes to it as well. So we're just extending that Shopify experience that we couldn't do out of the box. So we can now see our related products. If we refresh the page, there we go. Wonderful. Now we're going to add in the extra couple of bits. I'm actually managing to talk ahead of the video, which didn't happen when I practiced this morning. Okay, we're going to refresh the page. And when we come down here, we can see we've got our article and our recipe. We go onto our article, and we all our own layout, all related articles with it. It was a really simple thing that they wanted to do, and it didn't actually take us an awful lot of time to make it happen in this way. These tabs just show we've got SEO and things like that as well, the kind of things you'd expect. Okay. Right, I think I have to stop the video before it'll go to the next slide. Now, I understand you'll share these slides with people afterwards, do you? So what I've done is list down a few other websites that have gone down this kind of route. Some of them are Magento, some are BigCommerce, some are Shopify Plus. There's some big brands on here as well that you may have heard of. Bang & Olufsen, Impossible Foods. I'm sure we've heard of those ones at the very least. So yeah, that will give you a good sort of basis and a good background to actually investigate and see what they're doing, see what the possibilities are. Because you only know whether or not to use headless e-commerce if you know what it can do, what the benefits are. And so the whole idea of this is almost to whet your appetite a little bit, just to go out and investigate it further. Speak to your fellow developers, speak amongst yourselves. Ask Justin over there, don't ask me. Okay, so I'm at the point at the end of the sort of presentation. Hopefully I should be about on time. Excellent. Where I'm going to say, if you've got any questions, now is the time to fire them at me. I may refer some to that gentleman over there, depending on whether or not I can answer them.